Did Sam Wilson's Avengers Team lineup for Avengers Doomsday just get confirmed? Is the Fantastic Four being set up to fail in the new MCU? Did She-Hulk actress Tatiana Maslany just throw a massive wrench into Marvel's plans for Avengers Secret Wars? Those are just some of your burning questions that I have selected for this week's edition of Ask Colton. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general. Whatever you want to ask, send it in to the email address askcoltonnow@gmail.com, and hey, maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show. And guys, I get a lot of questions sent to the mailbag, and I wish I could answer every single one of them, but sometimes I just can't get to them all. But if you're a channel member, that does guarantee that you will get one of your questions answered right here on the show every show. So if you want to support the channel in that way, it is very much appreciated. And remember, the show is now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all the podcasting places. We're there. So if you've got a sec, give the show a download. It really helps us out a lot. All right, let's get things started with our first question. Our first question comes to us from Hazel. Oh, I love that name. What a beautiful name, Hazel. All right, Hazel writes, Colton, did you see that the Avengers Doomsday Sam Wilson Captain America Avengers team has been revealed, and it includes the new Falcon, Thor, Loki, Shang Chi, and Ant-Man? What are your thoughts on Sam's new Avengers lineup? Okay, thank you so much for the question. But let's be clear, and it's not just you, Hazel. Many people are taking this and running with it and assuming that, oh, Sam Wilson's Avengers team has been revealed. And you probably read several headlines saying that. But I'm here to poo-poo or piss or whatever on everyone's parade. No, they have not confirmed Sam Wilson's new Avengers lineup for Doomsday. Let me tell you what really happened. So this all stems from this event in, I believe, Brazil, where they gave us this full cast lineup, the same 27 names that we saw in the Doomsday Chair Watch announcement video. And now we're seeing them at this event, and they put all their headshots and stuff up on the big screen. And they grouped the cast by different groupings before showing the big wide shot of the whole cast. They did Fantastic Four, X-Men, the Misfit Thunderbolts, if the translation I watched was correct, the Wakandan Warriors, which featured Shuri Black Panther, King M'Baku, and Namor, and lastly, the, quote, heroic Avengers. So people are taking this to mean that, hey, the Fantastic Four, they're a team. The X-Men, they're a team. The Thunderbolts, they're a team. The Wakandans, they're a team that kind of, I don't know that you can necessarily call that a team. But hey, all those other teams are teams. So that means that this grouping with Sam Wilson's Captain America, that must mean that this is Sam Wilson's new Avengers team that he's been working on forming ever since the end of Captain America Brave New World. And, you know, of course, in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene, we saw that the Thunderbolts are the new Avengers, but they're apparently having issues with Sam Wilson. Like, he's not happy that they're using the name and he's suing them for it. And that's likely because he doesn't want to work with Val. It's a whole thing that really hasn't been made clear as of yet. But regardless of all that, I'm here to be the bearer of not necessarily bad news, because I don't think it's bad news, but this lineup, this Sam Wilson Captain America team confirmed bullshit that is being peddled online, this is not by any means any official confirmation that this is the new Avengers team. This is Captain America's Avengers team. No, this was simply a piece of copy that was read by an announcer to showcase Avengers Doomsday at this event. It's a giant cast. They don't yet have a trailer that they're showing. That trailer is totally cut, by the way. It's about to come out. But they're just promoting the film. And they were sharing this huge cast of all these stars that are in the movie. And they used certain groupings to get people excited. Like, hey, look at this movie. The Fantastic Four are all here. The X-Men are all here. The Thunderbolts are all here. And look, it's your favorite Avengers from MCU's past, the heroic Avengers. That's what they're doing. This isn't in any way saying, hey, this is Sam's team of Avengers. At least, I don't think that's what they're doing. I highly, highly doubt that's what they're doing. This was just a grouping of characters because it makes sense to put all the X-Men together. It makes sense to put all the Fantastic Four together, etc., etc. Where do you throw these other characters? Well, They're the OG, or some of them are even like newer characters. They're the MCU Avengers type characters from the Infinity Saga and some from the Multiverse Saga. They don't fall into one of these buckets of Thunderbolts, X-Men, Fantastic Four, so we'll call them the Heroic Avengers. That is all this was. I think they really just didn't know where to stick everybody else, and calling them the Heroic Avengers just made the most sense. Now, there are two ways to look at it when we talk about teams in Avengers Doomsday. Yes, there are teams, like official teams, like the X-Men are a team, the Fantastic Four, they're a team. We've got the new Avengers, which were the Thunderbolts, they're a team, etc. And then there are just like the simple groupings of characters that are going to be teams in Avengers Doomsday. But what we are really going to see in Doomsday, I think, is a conglomeration of different teams, like different members of different teams pulled from those teams and crisscrossed with one another. So you'll see members of the Fantastic Four working with the X-Men, working with Avengers, working with whoever. And then you'll see other members from those teams working with other members from those teams. I think we'll see different members from each team joining forces for their own separate missions, and we'll see individuals from each team essentially representing their team. Like, we could see Ben Grimm the Thing representing the Fantastic Four for a certain collection of characters. I think we'll see like Reed and maybe Johnny go with some of the Thunderbolts characters and some of the OG Avengers, and they could travel to the X-Men universe, perhaps pursuing Franklin Richards and Doctor Doom, and maybe Doom even has Sue Storm with him as well, like he abducted them both in that post-credit scene we saw in Thunderbolts. And then we could see, say, and spoiler warning, this is based on a set photo, so if you want to know nothing, don't watch any further, skip ahead a little bit. Still here? All right. There's a set photo where we saw the Thing, John Walker, Joaquin's the Falcon, and the photo was taken by Chris Hemsworth, Thor's stunt double. So we could see a scenario where the Thing, Falcon, Thor, John Walker, maybe Ant-Man and whoever else, and maybe they're going as a team to get to Loki before Doom can, while that other team is chasing down Doom and trying to get Franklin. And then there could be like a 616 Earth-based team like Namor, Shuri's Black Panther, and King M'Baku, who are remaining on Earth, and they're protecting not only their kingdoms, but the entire planet. And we could see some Thunderbolts or some Avengers, like Yelena and maybe Sam and Bucky. Maybe they stay on Earth as well, protecting Earth from any incoming attacks from Doctor Doom, or maybe his Doombots, or whatever, mischievous stuff that Doom has up his sleeve. I do think that we are going to see Doom attacking like on all fronts. There will be a reason that the teams need to divide and conquer, because Doom is going to be like everywhere at once, whether that be through the use of variant selves or Doombots, we'll just have to see. And this will all mirror what we saw in, I think, Infinity War, with Tony and Strange and Spider-Man teaming up with some of the Guardians of the Galaxy over on Titan. We saw Thor and Rocket and Groot go to Nidavellir. And then there was everyone else who was in Wakanda protecting Vision. So maybe there's someone on Earth 616 that Doom is like also pursuing, just like he pursued Franklin, just like maybe he's pursuing someone over in the X-Men universe. Maybe that someone is even Bob, aka Sentry, who could take the place of, I won't go too deep into the comic here, but Molecule Man in the Secret Wars comic, super powerful character that Doom was pursuing and whose power he needed, or God, I can't even really remember at this point. It's been so long since I read it. But a being that Doom was going after and needed to enact his evil plan. Many have theorized that Sentry could be filling that role in Doomsday and in Secret Wars. And okay, this is good. Sentry, at the moment, he is unable to use his powers and be this, full-on, like, Superman level, perhaps even stronger than Superman level force that we saw in Thunderbolts. He's unable to do that because if he does that, the darker half comes out. So, he can't protect himself, and he's also no help fighting Doom. But, what if Doom is after him for his power? So, they take Bob, Sentry, to Wakanda, or down into Talokan. And they put him there to keep him safe from Doom, just like they did with Vision when he was injured, and he was arguably like one of their most powerful members, but he was injured, and Thanos was after the Mind Stone, and they took him to Wakanda to protect him. We could see that same thing repeated here with Sentry. Now, does that get too repetitive and too like copy and paste from Infinity War? Maybe, but I mean, if the boot fits, I should do it. But seriously, I really do not think that we are meant to take this whole thing as, oh my God, it's Sam's Avengers team. No, it's just a grouping of characters. They're just grouping the cast into different groups. Some of the groupings were extremely obvious, like, oh, the Fantastic Four are in this movie. The X-Men are in this movie. So they said the heroic Avengers, because these are guys from previous, MCU proper films. It really, I don't think it means anything beyond that. I mean, Loki is all of a sudden on Sam's Avengers team. Loki, at least as far as we know at the current moment, he's sitting on the throne at the end of time. Being a part of Sam's Earth-based Avengers for that one universe, that's a little below his pay grade. No, now, characters like Ant-Man, Shang Chi, Falcon, of course, those are all great people to have be on Sam's official team that he is forming. And that could totally be the case. We could learn that Sam has put together somewhat of a team. And it does include Tic Tac. It does, of course, include Falcon. It does include Shang Chi, who is, kind of in the mix now because he's met Captain Marvel, he's met Wong, and all those characters. So, maybe we'll see the Fantastic Four rocket land in New York City. We see the new Avengers, in their Quinjet go to investigate. Spider-Man also swings in at the same time. And then we see Sam's Avengers come in as well, all to investigate, and they all meet in that moment and then decide, hey, okay, let's go to the Avengers Tower and we'll talk. And that'll be the moment where we get the exposition dump of what the hell's going on, and okay, we're gonna go here and we're gonna do this and you do that and we gotta get to there. The scene where they explain what's happening. And then we could see them like split into their actual like character groupings. I'm hesitant to say teams because it seems to get people confused, but they're different teams for the movie. And just at that point, I don't think Loki will have really entered the picture yet. I mean, maybe the film opens with him getting yeeted off the throne or something, so that's possible. Personally, my theory is that I think we are going to see Thor some way, shape, or form become aware of what's going on and then like go to Earth, perhaps like looking for help, or really just maybe looking for the 10 Rings beacon that he knows contains this path to the end of time, which is where his brother is. We've talked about before that beacon in that Shang-Chi post-credit scene. That beacon looks exactly like that shot of Loki's Yggdrasil tree turned on its side. So I think that could totally be leading to Loki. And so maybe Thor wants to come in, get that beacon. Long story short, I've rambled. This means nothing. And look, while we're on the topic and also stuff from this report meaning nothing, I've seen a lot of headlines also running with, RDJ is playing Victor Von Doom, confirmed according to this cast image where he is listed as Victor Von Doom at that same event. And this confirms that he is Victor Von Doom, not a Tony Stark variant. My guys, your media literacy and comprehension are just off the charts. Okay. They said from the jump, the Russos said from the jump when they announced that RDJ was coming back to play Doctor Doom, that he was playing Victor Von Doom. This isn't news. He's been playing Victor Von Doom. That's number one. Number two, him playing Victor Von Doom doesn't remotely take away the possibility of him and Tony Stark being variants of one another. Why would it? Variants can have different names, different lives. I'll go back to Kang. Dude has gone by many names, and he has had many different lives that unfolded in entire different periods in time. But they're still variants of each other. You've got Victor Timely, Rama Tut, He Who Remains, Kang, Nathaniel Richards, the Scarlet Centurion. There are so many different variants of Kang who have different names and different lives. So just because RDJ is playing Victor Von Doom doesn't then mean, oh, well, his name's Victor Von Doom. Guess he's not a Tony Stark variant. dumb. I'm telling you, some people, I try to teeter on this line of trying to be like Mr. Rogers and nice to everybody, but also sometimes I fall off the other end where everybody's just a fucking idiot. So anyway, let's cool it with the claims that this confirms, oh, this is Sam Wilson's Avengers team. No, it doesn't. And let's cool it with the claims that this in any way confirms anything new about whether or not Doctor Doom is multiversally connected to Tony Stark, because it doesn't. None of this confirms any of that. So, what was the question? All right. Thank you so much for that question, Hazel. And I hope you know that none of that anger was targeted at you. You wrote a beautiful question and you have a beautiful name. I just get irritated with these headlines that go out there that people see, and they see it in a headline on a reputable website, I guess you could say. A lot of them just aren't reputable. A lot of them are just clickbait that are usually underpaid freelance work. And that is not disrespect to the freelancers. What I'm saying is there a lot of these sites don't have like journalistic checkpoints. It's just people uploading stuff like Facebook or something. So you got to be careful. But it does get irritating that, some person will tweet one thing, an assumption they have, and it becomes headline news. Anyway, thank you so much for the question. All right, let's move on to our next question. This one comes to us from channel member EO Cine V2. Thank you so much for being a channel member. Cine writes, which comic event that was actually considered a bit of a letdown on paper do you think would do better in the MCU with some minor tweaking? Operation Zero Tolerance wasn't anyone's favorite run, but it really worked well in X-Men 97. Yeah, it did. I'm thinking of things in that ballpark. All right. Well, thank you so much for that question, and thank you again for being a channel member. Really appreciate it. So when talking about comic lines that weren't received well on the page, but do have the potential to be adapted well on the big screen or the small screen, one that always comes to mind for me is, okay, well, actually, I was going to say two. No, three. There are three that come to mind. There's the Clone Saga Spider-Man story. There's the Spider-Man One More Day story that has kind of sort of already been adapted with No Way Home. And then number three is Civil War 2. Now, Civil War 2 is the one that I want to talk about to answer your question, because I'm actually surprised that they haven't already done it in the multiverse saga. And I'm hopeful that they may take a crack at it in like a post Secret Wars MCU. So Civil War 2, it featured the rivalry of Tony Stark Iron Man versus Carol Danvers Captain Marvel, as opposed to Civil War 1, which was Tony versus Steve Rogers, Cap. And that was, of course, loosely adapted for the MCU's Captain America Civil War, which we'll talk about here shortly. So in the comics, for Civil War 2, there is this new Inhuman named Ulysses who has the ability to predict the future. Now, Captain Marvel wants to use this ability to prevent bad shit from happening before it happens, while Tony, on the other hand, argues that punishing people before the fact is wrong and can lead to like some serious consequences when it comes to, freedoms and liberty. Now, this is a storyline that I think would have been and could still absolutely be perfect for the MCU, with, of course, some slight modifications. We need to keep in mind that the MCU's Civil War, it is a total departure from the comic book story. Apart from like some shared characters and thematic beats, that movie is really just adaptation in name only. And I think the same would and should be true for an MCU Civil War 2. I mean, you have to, because Civil War 2 happens at a point in the comics that is so just starkly different from where we're at right now in the MCU. So you have to adapt quite a bit. You have to change quite a bit, to make it work. So I think you definitely keep Captain Marvel. They did a lot of work to set her up through Endgame, and then it kind of feels like they've kind of abandoned the character. I think you keep Captain Marvel, but you, of course, swap Tony Stark because he's dead. And I think you swap him with Sam Wilson's Captain America. And instead of Ulysses being an Inhuman, I think you have him be a mutant. The multiverse saga, it's already laying the groundwork for, the introduction of mutants into the MCU. We've already taken a crack at the Inhumans, didn't go so well. So yeah, I think you make him a mutant, and I think that would have been a great, starting first step to slowly introducing the mutants into the MCU. The next saga, in all likelihood, I think it's going to be the Mutant Saga. Therefore, it's going to be a very mutant heavy, mutant centric saga. So even in like non X-Men films, the saga is still the Mutant Saga. So I think Civil War II and having Ulysses in it, but not as an Inhuman, but as this really powerful mutant whose powers have a significant consequence on society, on humanity, that makes it a really solid option for. I think they could have done it in the Multiverse Saga, but it could also be great for a post Secret Wars film. Now, let's tackle had they done it in this saga first, and then we'll talk about the possibilities for a post Secret Wars way to do it. The character of Sam and Carol, in the Multiverse Saga, I think both of those characters have really deserved better. They did a lot to set them up, and had they stuck to it, they being Marvel, and really given these characters the time and attention and treatment that they deserved and done it right, because I'm not saying they abandoned the characters. I mean, Sam got a full show and a movie. Carol got another movie. So I'm not saying that they completely abandoned the characters. They weren't laying the groundwork and building to anything really. And that's where the problem kind of lies, where they were just kind of done a bit of a disservice. And it's neither the actors' faults or the characters' faults. It's just a management issue. But anyway, I think they deserve better in this post-Endgame era. We should have gotten, I think, a post-Endgame Civil War movie, like in phase 4 maybe, or phase 5 of the MCU, and then have that lead to like a proper Avengers movie in phase 4 or 5. I could totally see Carol with like her cosmic macro view of the universe, not just of Earth, and her wanting to use this future telling mutant to prevent catastrophe because she is constantly crisscrossing the cosmos trying to tend to everyone in need, all of these different civilizations. Whereas Sam, following in the footsteps of Steve Rogers, he would have like an understandably like more earthbound view, and he would want to protect not only the people of Earth, but like the individual liberties and freedoms. I mean, he is Captain America. And I think he would view like preventing natural disasters, that's one thing, but he would view arresting people before they commit crimes as a step way too far. And I think he, as a black man, and everything they built up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and in Brave New World, he could speak, a lot to the profiling nature of that type of system where people are, being incarcerated or arrested or picked up or whatever and tried before they've even committed the crime. He could speak to that a lot, just like Tony did in the Civil War II comic. And it would all tie back, I think, to Steve's words to Nick Fury in Winter Soldier.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
Now, I think Captain Marvel versus Captain America, that would have been dope. And it still could be. Granted, Captain Marvel, yes, could wipe the floor with Sam Wilson, of course. But that's not the point. It's a battle of ideas more than it's like a literal fistfight battle. So let's talk about what the teams could look like. So Sam's team would, of course, have Joaquin's Falcon. Captain Marvel's team, I think, would totally have her fangirl, Miss Marvel, at her side. But two characters that would be really fun to pit against each other, I think, would be Daredevil and She-Hulk, both attorneys, but one being a vigilante who works tirelessly night after night to catch bad guys and who may be swayable about the idea of stopping crime before it happens. But then we could see She-Hulk, say how that is not how the law works, and they could have like a great argument about the legal ramifications of pre-arresting people and how those cases would, how would they even be prosecuted? And I think She-Hulk would win that argument and convince Matt, Daredevil, to join her and Sam's side of this argument. And other characters, that come to mind for this would be characters like Doctor Strange, who has used future telling to save the entire universe before, when he, saw how they were going to beat Thanos and how he made the decision that he's going to sacrifice Tony because he knew Tony was going to die, but it was for the greater good of beating Thanos and saving the universe and saving all the people that he dusted away. So he, Doctor Strange, would probably be in favor of the idea and be Team Captain Marvel. And real God, the more I talk about it, the more I wish they had actually done this for the multiverse saga. It'd be cool. It's crazy, really, how much shit they put in this saga, but how little of it actually had any impact and built to anything. This would have been a great story for this saga, because this saga, I mean, it was all about timelines and variant futures and the decisions you make and free will and how the decisions you make result in completely different futures. And Loki's whole show was about, giving people free will. And you have this debate of, well, is the future truly set? That would have been perfect for this movie. A story about the dangers of messing with time and reading the future and trying to predict the future and punishing people in advance. That theme would all tie in perfectly with the theme of the multiverse saga without it even actually having anything to do with the multiverse. And then you could later find out that Ulysses' mutant power, his ability to see the future, is connected to the multiverse. Oh my God. Marvel, call me. I'm not good at anything but this. I'm good at this. Give me a call. Now, look, they could still do this, I think, in the next saga. Like I said, they kind of, they've already set it up, I think. This a little bit. They've set up a divide with Sam and the new Avengers. But I assume that they'll touch on all that in Doomsday. I don't know if that divide leads into anything else post Secret Wars. They've got a lot of stuff to juggle in these two movies, so I don't know how they're going to juggle that divide. That kind of felt like they were setting up a Civil War scenario for Sam versus Bucky or Sam versus Yelena. Both of which would be cool, by the way, because we'd see the Avengers versus the Avengers, which is basically what the first Civil War movie was. But anyway, yeah, I'm kind of upset now that they didn't do Civil War 2 in the multiverse saga. Anyway, thank you so much for your question. All right, our next question comes to us from channel member Angel Man Freddy. The Thing is my all-time favorite hero. That blend of fierce loyalty, indomitable will, and Bronx everyman personality just do it for me. He didn't get to truly shine in Fantastic Four First Steps. With Fantastic Four 2 and Inevitability, what do you think the Russos might do to capture his best qualities and make him a more appealing character? Well, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for being a channel member. I loved the Ben Grimm, The Thing that we saw in First Steps. I thought he was very appealing, and I thought that they did him perfectly, really. Just to your point, we didn't get enough of him, I think was my problem with it. I'm someone who, overall enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps, but I've also been very critical of it because had this movie not been absolutely butchered in the editing room, it would actually be a really good movie. I think it was in desperate need of some breathing room, really. They cut that movie to shreds because they were trying so damn hard to play it so super safe because they knew how important it was to get it right, especially a Fantastic Four movie, because there had really basically never been a great one. And really, there still hasn't been. Now, while they did get it right in terms of, I think, the look and the feel and really everything, the characters, they handled them very well. No one scene in that movie, I think, is a bad scene. But as a whole, the movie was lacking, I think, about 20 to maybe even on the high end 40 minutes worth of more time with these characters and for the story. The whole movie just kind of felt like a fucking montage sequence. It always felt like we were just jumping month to month to month, at this rapid pace. It just went way too fast, in my opinion. And this rapid pace for these characters in that movie, it's about to become a recurring theme for them in this saga because, God, the post-credit scene already jumped forward 6 years, 5 years, something like that. Their first introduction to the MCU was this movie, and now they're immediately being thrown into this huge Avengers Doomsday, this huge culmination level event. Now, part of this rapid pace that I'm talking about that's really burdening the Fantastic Four, really, this new Fantastic Four, it resulted, I think, in Ben Grimm totally being sidebarred and not getting near the time and attention that that character deserved. And I don't mean like we need him like moping around, being sad that he's a rock now. I think they handled that bit perfectly with just that one shot of him looking at the TV, seeing himself before he became the Thing on the TV, and then it turns off and he sees his reflection as the Thing, and we see that sad look on his face. It was perfect. So my problem isn't with that aspect of it. But what I did want to see more of was just a little bit more time with like Ben and the Rachel character, and just more moments with Ben and Johnny and Ben and Reed and Ben and Sue, and all of which, we got those things, but just not nearly enough of it. And here's where it gets frustrating, I think, for like the future of this Fantastic Four franchise within a franchise. It's that, and this is really the case for all MCU films, is that we can never really have like proper sequels or proper trilogies, because this is an interconnected universe of interconnected stories where we see the characters show up in other projects before we see them show up in the sequel to their own solo projects. So like the Thor trilogy, the Captain America trilogy, those aren't really trilogies. Like when I hear the debate of, oh, what's the best comic book trilogy of all time? And it usually comes down to either Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy or the Captain America trilogy. And I'm always hesitant to give it to Cap because how can you call that a trilogy when you have to have seen so many other movies to even watch that trilogy? You can't watch the Thor trilogy or the Cap trilogy without having seen the Avengers movies that came in between. And don't get me wrong, I like the interconnectivity of the MCU, but there is a give and take. And proper trilogies is one of the gives for the MCU. And that's okay, because we get this great interconnected story. But like even take the Guardians trilogy, which feels, I'd say it feels the most secluded of any trilogy in the wider MCU, but even it cannot be watched without having seen Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. If you watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and then watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3, you're going to be like, what the fuck is happening? So Fantastic Four, it's falling into this same problem as well. And we'll never really get a true sequel to Fantastic Four First Steps, because Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars will both be such crucial pieces to this family's overall story. And we're going to see like the entire multiverse reset before we get Fantastic Four 2. So whenever we do get that Fantastic Four sequel, which I should totally be one of the first movies that we get after Secret Wars, none of this, 6 or 7 years later bullshit before we get a sequel like they've done with Shang Chi. Whenever we do get that sequel, in a lot of ways, I think it's going to be its own thing. That they don't need to feel the need to follow like some kind of like sequel structure. I think they can just tell a new story that might even feel like a fresh start in this new Marvel universe and like a first movie in its own right. And this family, Marvel's first family, they are going to be a big centerpiece, I would think, I would hope, to this new post-Secret Wars MCU. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they bring all these like different eras and universes into one cohesive reality come the end of Secret Wars, because the Fantastic Four in First Steps, they're coming from not only a different universe, but like a retro futuristic 1960s reality. But now they'll like all seemingly find themselves in a, like futuristic but modern universe when it's all like combined into one at the end of Secret Wars, and we have all of our MCU characters in one combined universe. So that alone will make the sequel very different from the original. And look, if the reports about the Russo brothers kind of taking over for the next saga post Secret Wars are true, if Feige does want them to stick around and help shepherd the overarching storyline of this next saga, maybe even allowing for Feige to take a promotion and move up to president of all Disney movie studios, like that would include Lucasfilm and Pixar, and then he could place the Russo brothers over Marvel Studios as his replacement, but still, and he'd be overseeing it as well, but he'd get to go play in Star Wars and Pixar as well, and he'd be able to let the day-to-day stuff go to the Russos and let them run it. That could be great, and that I could see that happening. So what would a Fantastic Four sequel look like, especially if this is a mutant saga that it's taking place in? Well, I think we could see Sue Storm back in her like activist type role. In the comics, her son Franklin is in fact a mutant, so he'll be directly involved with all of that. He has the mutant X gene, and that will probably, I think, be revealed in Doomsday. I think we are going to see Franklin in that X-Men universe. I think we're going to see Reed go after him. I think Reed will meet Beast. Kelsey Grammer, who plays Beast, has even said that he shared a scene with Pedro Pascal. So maybe we'll see a scene where like Beast or Xavier explain like, hey, your son, we picked up on his, whatever, as he was brought through the universe, and he has the mutant X gene, and explain what mutants are, and set that all up for the mutant saga. And to bring it back around to your initial question being about Ben, I think that with Ben, the thing being not a mutant, but a mutate, difference being that mutants are born mutants with the mutant X gene, while mutates are people who are born human and who are human but acquired their powers later on in life. But Ben Grimm, despite not being a mutant but a mutate, he would still know all about, what it means to be different, to look different, and to be stared at. And he'll have a lot in common, I think, with mutants. And he'll understand like the difference, like some mutants can pass for human, like they're passing, human passing, but then there are other mutants who have like physical mutations and they can't pass. And that's like a divide in mutant kind. So I really hope that we get to hear like a conversation maybe in Doomsday between like the Thing and Beast about, being these big monster looking dudes and trying to be accepted by society. That'd be so good. And, part of me is kind of hopeful that, as we talk about what Ben Grimm's future is going to be in a post Secret Wars and the Fantastic Four sequel and all that, part of me is hopeful that maybe Kelsey Grammer will stick around as Beast. I mean, it's a mocap character, so there's really no reason that he couldn't play him for a while. Hell, he didn't even have to do the physical movements. He could just, sit down and do the lines and then mocap his face and have somebody else do the walking around. So I am kind of hopeful that maybe they'll keep him around for like a post Secret Wars X-Men movie that will have, a whole new X-Men cast when it comes to the youngins. But I think we could keep OGs like Beast and maybe have, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, I think they are totally done after Secret Wars. I mean, Jesus, they're both like getting into their 90s, but you could still keep their threat around by having like a Michael Fassbender and a James McAvoy come in to play Professor X and Magneto, because I don't see them bringing back all these original X-Men for Doomsday and Secret Wars just to say, okay, that's all, folks. We're rebooting entirely for the X-Men. We're keeping a lot of the other MCU characters. They're going to be in the new universe. They're coming back. But all the X-Men, whoosh. I think a lot of the X-Men, whoosh. But I think you keep some of those threads, especially when you have a McAvoy and a Fassbender. And what am I talking about? You asked about the Thing and the Fantastic Four sequel. My apologies. Thank you so much for your question, my friend, and thank you so much for being a channel member. I really appreciate it. All right. Next, we have a question from another channel member. All right, thank you so much. Call Me John 1 asks, who is your least favorite adapted villain in the MCU and why? What would you change about them to make them better? Okay, thank you for the question. It is popular to say that the MCU has a villain problem. And that's been being said since Phase 1, the Infinity Saga. Now, that's never really a take that I have felt particularly strong about one way or another. I mean, I get it. I get that some of the MCU villains aren't like super memorable. Like the Dark Elves and Thor the Dark World, Ronan and Guardians of the Galaxy, the dude from Iron Man 2, the fire dudes from Iron Man 3, they were also kind of dumb. But the MCU, I think, has also delivered a shit ton of great villains, like all-time greats, like the obvious, like Loki, Ultron, Thanos, Killmonger, Hela. Who else? Vulture, I think, was really well done, and that was MCU. I could go on. And the rest, I think, they fall under like somewhere between like great and meh. So kind of, they're fine, they're good. But one that really comes to mind for me that I feel strongly about, one that was done really, really well in some aspects, but done absolutely horribly in other ways, is, of course, Kang the Conqueror. Now, when I say Kang, I am including the villain He Who Remains as well. Jonathan Majors, he delivered a brilliant performance, I think, as He Who Remains in Loki, and he did great as Kang in Quantumania as well. And I think the writers and directors involved in that, crafting that story and crafting that character, they all did a great job developing his character and making him menacing and, whatnot. But where they really fucked up was doing way too much telling, and I would say not enough showing, but like no showing. No showing. What? We saw Kang go to woods? Wasn't it like it was just him shooting a laser in like this flashback, and Janet's all, "Oh my god, he's so evil. He blew up universes." And we just see like CGI universes blowing up. We don't see any like actual stuff that shows him being a menacing force. We're told over and over and over and over again how big and bad he remains and Kang are. We're told he's this Avengers slayer. He's conquered all these worlds and he's killed so many Avengers. He's the ultimate unstoppable badass. But not once, not a single time do we see him body anybody. There's all this talk from himself and from Loki and Janet about how dangerous this Kang guy is, but we never see it. But what do we see? To make it even worse, we see him get his ass kicked by the Ant family. The Ant family annihilate this guy pretty fucking easily. And we're supposed to believe that he's this unstoppable force that has killed hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even hitting 1 million Avengers in his multiversal conquering quests? It doesn't pass the smell test, man. It smells bad. And look, there's of course all the real world stuff with what happened with Jonathan Majors and his personal life and the big pivot that Marvel did from Kang to Doctor Doom, and the character, he's been through a lot. The character of Kang. The character has just been done dirty all around. And it is going to be a long time before they can do him again. But I hope that when they do eventually do the character again, I hope that they will do it right. They need some time to breathe, some time and distance, I think, from the bad taste that everyone has in their mouth regarding the character. But, maybe 10, 15 years down the road, they can bring him back. Maybe they even get Jonathan Majors to, maybe they even get Jonathan Majors to come in and play him again after he's been in timeout long enough. That maybe general audiences would be open to him coming back and playing the role again. We'll just have to see. I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, that's the one. That's the one that really they screwed the pooch on, for lack of a better phrase. They got so much right, and it really just grinds my gears that they got so much right, yet so much wrong at the same time. So, forget the whole Majors drama part of it, which is, of course, a very important piece of it. But even before all that happened, this character was already getting rat fucked. This character in this arc and this saga had too many cooks in the kitchen and too much going back and forth and not knowing where they were headed. It just was not being managed well. And the saga and the character of Kang and just the MCU in its entirety have taken a major hit because of it. And that before, like I was saying, before the major stuff happened with all that drama, that they were already considering mid-saga this early pivot to Doctor Doom from Kang. The whole thing was just a clusterfuck from the jump. So Kang, that's my MCU villain that they really just dropped the ball on, and that I wish could have panned out better than it did. I'm trying to think if there's like anyone else that comes to mind. I mean, they did Taskmaster kind of dirty. And no, I'm not talking about, because they made her a girl. No, I don't care that they made her a girl. I'm just not crazy about how they handled the character and how they just completely cast the character aside in Thunderbolts. That's a really cool character, Taskmaster. And I think that character deserved better and could have been like a dope villain for like Spider-Man or Daredevil or Kate Bishop or, various other heroes in like a future project. Maybe after the reset in Secret Wars, we get another version of Taskmaster that could totally still be a girl. Hell, make her a widow, but still have the character be more true, I think, to the comic counterpart. And I don't know, like, speak. All right. Thanks so much for the question, and thank you so much for being a channel member. It's very much appreciated. All right. This next one comes to us from Jonah. Jonah writes, do you think we'll ever see She-Hulk again in the MCU, or did the show completely ruin future prospects for the character? Could we see a scenario where they pretend the show happened in another universe, isn't canon, and just recast the role and start over? All right. So I picked this question because it's actually a topic that is somewhat in the news here recently, with this report from a few days back that Marvel apparently really wants She-Hulk to have a significant role in Avengers Secret Wars, which makes sense because She-Hulk is in the Secret Wars comic. But apparently, Tatiana Maslany isn't all that interested in coming back. Now, I don't know if that is true. This is a rumor from a scooper. It's not an official report from like a Variety or a Deadline or anything like that. But this report states that if Disney is unable to convince Maslany to return, that they would be faced with the options of either recasting the role or just removing the character from their plans for Avengers Secret Wars. Now, I really liked the She-Hulk show. I know that's not a popular opinion. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you, to like it. I don't care. I liked it. It worked for me. And I was really looking forward to seeing this character have a big part to play in the future of the MCU. And, at the time, because She-Hulk came out a while ago in the early stages of this saga, I was really looking forward to her having a big role, like back when it looked like they might actually do a proper like phase 4 Avengers movie to cap off that first phase back from Endgame, a movie that was on the same scale as that first Avengers movie and would have a new team lineup of like, I don't know, She-Hulk and Ant-Man and Yelena Belova and maybe Rhodey and Sam Wilson and hell, Spider-Man, through Spider-Man in there. I don't know, just something new, a back to basics style movie. And I thought that She-Hulk and what we saw from her character in that She-Hulk series and how well she was portrayed by Tatiana Maslany and how funny and quirky the character was, I was really excited for it. Now, I know, I can hear you typing. I know that I'm in the minority on that. And by no means do I think that that show was a perfect show. But you're just lying to yourself if you don't think that the reason that that show is viewed as such a massive failure for Marvel isn't because there was such a vocal minority of people who decided they were going to hate the show before it even came out. They did the same thing with The Acolyte, another show that I liked, and a lot of normal people who I have a ton of respect for didn't like that show, and that's totally fine. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you're a misogynist or a bigot or a racist or whatever, that these anti-woke people like to say that we call them because they don't like a show. No, we call you that because you say a bunch of crazy ass shit. It has nothing to do with you not liking the show. Anyway, there are plenty of people who didn't like She-Hulk or didn't like Acolyte or whatever, that completely valid opinion. I'm not sitting here policing them, saying, oh, well, that's a wrong opinion. I would never do that. To be clear, many well-meaning, genuine people just didn't like the show. That's fine. It's a far from perfect show. But the oh, it's woke crowd, they are the crowd that they were so loud about how awful they thought this show was that it made a lot of people just not even bother to give it a chance, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. The reason I bring this up is that show became so... The discourse around that show became so toxic, really. And again, it's not, I'm not just saying, oh, if you didn't like that show, well, that means you didn't like it because it had she in the name. No, I'm not saying that. Plenty of people just didn't like the show. Totally fine. But the discourse around that show, I think, being just absolutely, that show being shit panned, that could very well, I think, be a reason that Tatiana Maslany just doesn't have much of an interest in returning. Whether the criticism of the show be valid or not, you cannot dispute the fact that the show was not received well, and that that show is generally generally regarded as eh. And with that very vocal minority being so aggressive about, attacking the show and having, yes, their ridiculous attacks of the show, calling it woke and all that, instead of actually like critiquing the show based on its, the actual show, they just, they call anything they don't like woke. Anyway, I think that definitely could have an impact on Tatiana Maslany just saying, you know what? I'm not really interested in going back to that. Not worth the drama. Maybe she has other roles in films and projects that she's looking to, explore. And it's just not that, she's just not that interested in returning. Maybe that's the case. But I think the more likely reason that she's not returning is that she is really just fed the fuck up with Disney. She publicly called during that whole Kimmel situation for people to cancel their Disney Plus subscriptions following, them bending the knee to the executive branch and pulling Kimmel off the air. And I was right there with her. I was pissed. I think it was really ballsy of her to, put her, a potentially really lucrative Marvel superhero role on the line like that. In fact, it made me think, it crossed my mind that, God, that's quite the thing to say if you're working for these people. I wonder if they're not working together because like there were no plans or contracts or anything for her to continue playing the role of She-Hulk, and that's what made her feel comfortable to just call Disney out like that. But no, Tatiana Maslany just proved that she has a major pair of lady balls, and she didn't give a fuck about a paycheck if that paycheck came with the stipulation of having to close her eyes and pretend that there wasn't some major fuckery happening right before her eyes. Marvel, if this report's true, wants her to come back, wants her to play She-Hulk, wants She-Hulk to have a significant role in Secret Wars. But I understand if she doesn't want to come back. I totally get it. I don't blame her. But what does that mean for the character of She-Hulk? Well, my hope is that it doesn't mean a damn thing. My hope is that they won't completely abandon the character simply because the actress doesn't want to play the part anymore. Just recast. If she doesn't want to do it, and if you don't want to try to like hold her to a contract or something that, she probably did, sign a multi-picture, multi-project deal. But if you don't want to hold her to that, even though you probably could, like, legally force her to appear in the movie, why do that? Why, have such an unpleasant experience and an actress on set that doesn't even want to be there? Or if she just straight up refuses and then you have to sue her, and you sue her like for, a certain amount of money because she refused to return for the role. And so she has to pay like damages or whatever. And then, that just invites like bad press, and the money that you would get from the lawsuit if you won, which you probably would if she's breaking a contract. But the money that Disney would get from that would be a drop of piss in the ocean compared to just the sheer amount of wealth that Disney has. And why do that? Why do it? It's She-Hulk. It's a D-list hero from a streaming show. It's not like it was Robert Downey Jr. mid-Infinity Saga saying, nah, I'm done. And you're having to scramble to figure out what the fuck to do with Iron Man and what to do with the saga. No, it's a relatively, like, I don't want to say an unpopular character. I mean, hell, Iron Man once upon a time was a very, not unpopular, but like a D-list superhero. But what I'm saying is that She-Hulk, it's not like She-Hulk has been built up to this point with Tatiana Maslany, where she is just such a pivotal role in the MCU that you have to keep her around. No, if she doesn't want to do it, it's not the end of the world. You can just recast her. It's not a big deal. She's a character that's CGI most of the time anyway. There are plenty of phenomenal actresses that could step in to play the role if she's no longer interested in getting back into that world. And I think her show would still be canon to the character. She could even break the fourth wall and like acknowledge, hey, I look kind of different. Under no circumstances, though, do you get rid of the She-Hulk character or remove her from Secret Wars just because Tatiana Maslany doesn't want to come back to play her, if that's even true. Now, I've said for a long time that I do want to see She-Hulk in the Fantastic Four. I want her on that team. I want that relationship with Ben Grimm. Maybe Sue like steps down from her role as like a full-on like member of the Fantastic Four superhero team, and that leaves an official spot open for She-Hulk. And like maybe Sue wants to pursue like being a mother to Franklin and running the Future Foundation. So they need someone else to step in to fill that role on the Fantastic Four. And you can do all that with or without Tatiana Maslany, but I certainly hope it is with, because I thought she was great in the role, and hopefully we see her come back. I was honestly kind of surprised that she's not part of Doomsday. Maybe she will be. I don't have a prediction. I don't know. I don't know if she's going to be back, but I hope she is. All right. I think that was our last question. Yep, that was our last question. All right. Well, thank you so much for submitting that question. Thank you to all of you so much for submitting questions. If you didn't see your question featured on this episode of the show, but you sent it into the email, don't worry. It very well may appear on the next show. I have a whole list of questions right now that I have marked as I want to answer them on the show. I can just, I can only answer so many every show. And reminder to our, if you want to be a channel member, that guarantees you get one question answered per show, and it helps keep the lights on around here. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. My name's Colton Ogburn. I'll see you next time. Bye.